Hey everyone, welcome to a brand new SPSM Chat, SPSM Suicide Prevention Social Media, or as my co-host calls it, SPSM Chat. So we've got the original SPSM Chat crew tonight, all four of them. I always felt like when I first started this show, when I took over, that Doc Foreman would be like the final boss. If I could interview anyone that's just like the ultimate goal, it would be Doc Foreman. And guess what? When I reached out Doc Foreman, I got the whole crew. I'm incredibly blessed, and so are all of you watching out there. I know some people in the Twitter chat right now who don't normally watch because they don't like me and they like April, so hooray for that. Before we get on to our cast of characters, if you're watching this live, please let us know that you're here. Let us know that you care by using that hashtag SPSM, whether you're on Twitter or at SPSM Chat, Facebook.com/SPSM Chat, YouTube.com/SPSM Chat, Mixer.com/SPSM Chat, and you can watch all past shows at SPSMchat.com, which I'll have you know, April, you'll be very proud of me. I updated today, damn it. Without further ado, let's get to our round rectangle. And I only have one co-host, so we only fit 6 people on screen. So let's just go to my one and only co-host, Hudson Harris.
Hello, everyone. My name is Hudson Harris. I'm a behavioral health systems designer, and I am beyond excited to be here. I was actually the last or second to last guest with the original SPSM crew, so it's been like a year and a half now. So very excited to see everybody and talk tonight.
Yes, and before I forget, we actually have a graphic for tonight that I spent a good minute using. So there we go. Let's go on to our first co-guest of honor. First and foremost, let's be honest, guys. Tell the whole world, as if you don't need any introduction at all, who is Dr. April Foreman? Let me put your mic on. There we go.
There we go. And we're live. Everybody, I am so glad to be here. I am at Doc Foreman, one of the founders of the Suicide Prevention Social Media Chat. And of course, if we're going to write again and talk about the AAS virtual conference and the State of Suicidology, especially digitally, how could I not be here without RUDY and HUDSON and all these other guests that are about to come on live? I'm a licensed psychologist. I'm an executive board member of the American Association of Suicidology and a Fancy Pants. I'm so glad to be here.
So for those who don't know, first off, shame on them. Can you give like the brief spark notes of the progenesis of SPSM?
Absolutely. So the Suicide Prevention Social Media Chat was a project that started at AAS, I want to say 2013. Bill Schmidt had told me I should go because it would be the best conference ever. And we had met a bunch of suicidologists. I, of course, drug along Tony Wood because we had been collaborating on mental health and technology projects since about 2008. So I was like, come on down from Kansas. We're going to go to this thing. And there was like 2 other people tweeting. It was like Ursula Whiteside and me or something like that. And, you know, we said, this is the most important topic in public health that no one's talking about. Why is no one talking about it? And so at that time, everyone said, well, no one wants to talk about suicide. And I'm like, I've seen the news and I watch media. Everyone wants to talk about suicide. Like maybe we just need to give people an opportunity. So we planned what started as a Twitter chat, and as social media evolved, we've changed platforms and we've evolved to a live stream show with a chat. And of course, brought on lots of wonderful co-collaborators over the years. And I see Jonathan Singer's in the audience, and hi, Shirley. Of course, I met the wonderful Krista Marie, and we were hanging out. There's lots of great people who now are part of the SPSM sort of family. So
you stepped aside graciously from SPSM Chat, the whole gang, a year and some change ago, and there was some rough and tumbles, and here I am. Did you figure it out? Or did you figure that this would still be a thing, like almost 2 years after you left?
So I love building family and community. I think there have just been several phases of my life where I've done that, and things often continue. My goal is always that things continue, that they're not dependent upon me or dependent upon just a couple groups of people and, it falls apart. What I think I love the best is that it's better. Like, I mean, look at these cool graphics. There's all this stuff. There are new people who are involved. There are other people doing media. So they're like Jonathan Singer has a podcast, not because of SPSM, he already had one, but we've had Des and Jess who are doing their own thing. Lots of people are using social media, and they're using it about the topic of suicide in ways that really make sense. So I'm so excited that like you've done things with it and grown it. But what I really love is that everybody has owned what was important to them and did what we had hoped from the beginning, which was that we would use these digital tools to talk about this important issue in a way that could change things.
Well, thank you very much, April. Next, let's go to Bart, who's unsurprisingly tweeting right now. Tell the whole world, the whole SPSM Chat, Universe, Galaxy, Solar System. Who is Bart Andrews?
Oh, hey, hello, everybody. I am the Chief Clinical Officer at Behavioral Health Response, a groovy little crisis line in St. Louis, Missouri. I got roped into the SPSM crowd at the Crisis Con. I want to say Crisis Con 14, maybe.
16.
16? Really?
I think so. I
don't think that's right.
I think that's because that's when Tony and I were the keynotes, right?
No, I was at Chicago. I was at the Chicago AAS, and that was 16. So it might have been 15, but I have a feeling it was. And you guys were in Atlanta in 15, and I didn't go to that. I don't know.
LA was 2014, and then 2013 was Austin.
What was Nashville?
That was Crisis Con 2014.
We've officially gone old people SPSM.
It's bad. So anyway, I met Tony and April. I love them. April and I did a Between the Two Ferns video thing, which I'd never done anything like that before, and it was so much fun. And I just they invited me to join the show, and I absolutely fell in love with it. This is, if you don't know this, I didn't even really know what memes were until SPSM. We did a show. Do you remember we did a show
before memes?
Project Clarence or whatever the heck you call it, April. And we did a show on memes. And that's where I first discovered memes, because I was a meme virgin prior to SPSM, and just fell in love with SPSM. I think one of the things that attracted me most about SPSM is that, if folks don't realize this, there's a power structure, and there's kind of an old guard in suicide prevention, and nobody really speaks out against the status quo and really called them on their bullshit. And I like that SPSM was not afraid to have conversations about moving forward and about the future instead of focusing on the past. And I think of all the things about SPSM, our willingness to take on challenge and, sometimes upset people, which happen from time to time, is one of my favorite things. I don't really like upsetting people, but somehow I manage to do it on a regular basis, so I've just come to accept it, Rudy. So that's where we're at now.
You're really
well. That's certainly the most long-winded answer to "Who are you?" that I've ever received.
Thank you, Rudy. I tried to make you happy.
Who is Tony Wood?
Who is Tony Wood? I'm the co-founder of Quantify. We're an analytics company dedicated to behavioral health, as well as the chair of the board of the American Association of Suicidology. And oh boy, my goodness, we're going to go into the deep history. I was doing infrastructure consulting, and I did some implementation work for a community mental health agency, and then I got a little partnership going with some people who were doing very early crisis chat implementations, and I got invited to do a talk about it, and that along with that little side trip to Austin, Texas in, we think, 2014, Chris? 2013. 2013, I'm older than I thought, to the AS conference brings us here today. About 2 or 3 years after that, April and I received the Roger J. Tierney Award for Innovation in Suicide Prevention for founding this community. And basically all you people who are listening and been around, that's all because of you. And we couldn't be more thrilled or more surprised about the success of this, RUDY. I think your leadership here is remarkable.
Well, thank you. And I'm actually excited to talk to you. We have never done an interview before. I've interviewed all these other people at various times in my life, and yet you're the person I know the least about. So I'm excited for this. I know we have a lot to cover. But before we get into...
You don't want to find out more.
Who is Chris Maxwell?
According to HUDSON, I'm Bernie from Weekend at Bernie's, which I could roll with if you want me to. Hi, everybody. I'm Chris Maxwell. I'm the Director of Public Relations and Media at AAS. I am a virtual conference producer. I have spent a lot of time in the last 3 weeks trying to figure out how to move our in-person conference that was supposed to be this week in Portland, Oregon, and we were expecting about 2,000 people. We pivoted. Obviously, we had to because we can't have in-person meetings. And we had a great, successful conference with over 150 speakers. Somehow pulled it off. So I'm really excited about that. More about my background. I come from a crisis center world. I was on the phones talking with people locally and through the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline for about 6 years. And then from there, I started working for the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, helping crisis centers across the country communicate with each other, share tools and resources and all that. And then got into the public relations world over here at AAS. And we have, within the last couple of years, managed to build that from the ground up and really create AAS as a player, create a presence both in the media and in the field. So I'm very proud of that work as well. The work of our communications committee, the work of April and Tony and Bart helping to kind of turn things around. So we can get more into that later down the line in this conversation, but that's me.
Yeah, and I just want to say thank you real quick, Chris, because you handled the social media team. At one time, April did, and I was very appreciative of that because she was the person who got me into AAS, the AAS world in the first place. And then you took over the social media team, and you've always done an awesome work. You bring in good people who create awesome social media content. But I'm just so thankful that I never have to pay for this conference. So,
yeah, no, and thank you. I mean, thank you to the whole social media team. RUDY, you always do an excellent job. Noreen is kind of playing around on Twitter, it looks like. So thank you, Noreen. You always do a spectacular job. And that's something I learned from April. Obviously, the three other people here are my mentors. And April always managed to bring in the perfect people. She was very capable and able to kind of see who had what skills and fit them into places where they were the most effective. And it's been incredible to be a part of this whole thing, learning from her leadership as well.
Okay, so let's check in people on social media. There's quite a few, so we're going to try to get through this real quick. Hey, Cheryl Boswell, how are you? Steve Austin, sadly not Stone Cold, says, look at all these bosses. He's a cool guy. We got to get him on the show sometime. Cheryl Boswell, hello, did a great job presenting for the first time at AAS a couple of days ago. Actually, I think it was yesterday. Silji, how are you? Travis Atkinson, a boss of a man. The guy's future is so bright, clearly talking about Chris. Let's go on to the Twitter chat. Let's see how it goes. Hey, M, how are you? Hudson Harris, Katie Gordon, one of my favorite people in the world. So sad I could not see you in person at AAS this year. Noreen, we just mentioned, thank you so much. Joelle Marie, also helping out on Twitter by retweeting and really contributing value to the Twitter chat. Krista Marie, who is our Twitter chat moderator, who I cannot thank enough. Hopefully this is pinned to the top of the stream because that's the easiest way for people to show. Hey, Lynn, how are you doing? Lynn is one of our social worker students who's getting credit for participating. So thank you, Lynn. If I missed anyone, that's totally not... oh, hey, Amelia. We just got a lot to cover. And this is already, I can tell, is going to be a fully loaded show. So the way it works here, at least on SPSM 3.0, oh, by the way, I should probably introduce myself because I'm so bad at that. My name is RUDY CASERES. I have been co-hosting this show along with 4 other great co-hosts, including Hudson Harris, who is on tonight, since August of 2019. And my God, it has been a hell of a ride. You can follow me on Twitter at RUDY CASERES. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram as well. The way it works here on SPSM Chat 3.0, we have 4 questions, topics that we discuss. For everyone who was on the Twitter chat, for this question that I'm about to put up on right now, let me do it right now, actually, before I forget. The way it works is you just respond A1 to question 1, give your response. Make sure to use the hashtag SPSM on all the things. If you are on our other social platforms, including Facebook, Mixer, and YouTube, feel free to do the same as well. I can put your comments on screen. So question number 1, in your own words, define suicidology. Let's go with Doc Foreman.
You know what? This is so great because I was on Reddit and I go and people will talk about suicide on Reddit all the time. And I'll go and like occasionally drop tidbits. And every single time they're like, suicidology is a made up thing. And they'll like usually call shenanigans on me. And then someone will Wikipedia suicidology and they'll be like, and Google me and they'll be like, oh, dude, that's a thing. So suicidology is a science of the study of suicide, right? Like any other thing. And what's very interesting about that is that people feel that it's a made up word, but cardiology is not a made up word. Like we study the heart, we study suicide, psychology, we study the psyche. Suicidology is just a study of suicide.
Well, that's simple enough. Let's go to Bart Andrews.
I think April nailed it. I mean, the reason that Schneidman created the term suicidology was that suicide was a neglected area of study, and he really wanted to make a field that was all about the study of suicide. So suicidology is about understanding suicide. That's kind of what it is. I don't really have a lot to add to it.
Tony Wood.
Coined, I think, in the early 50s, but the founder of AAS, the founders of AAS and IASR, the International Association of Suicide Research, Edwin Schneidman and Norman Fabreau. They were the early founders of the Los Angeles Suicide Prevention Center, which was the first crisis line in the United States. They did the groundbreaking research in the phenomena of suicide shortly after the war. They got together in World War II and decided to try to do this when it was a very, very difficult thing to do, and there was no data at all. They also invented suicide. They also invented psychotopsy as well.
Well, that totally wasn't the question at all. In your own words, define suicidology. I think I said all of those.
Rudy just busted you so hard.
Are those my words?
Damn.
Are they my words if I say them?
No, if Schneidman has his hand up your back.
He's dead. He's been
Where-
dead.
It makes it
That's the
creepier.
creepiest. That's the creepiest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, that was a little terrifying.
Schneidman and Fabreau are stone dead. I mean, I love those guys, but they're dead.
That makes it worse.
Suicidology. We study suicide. We try to prevent suicide. That's what we do at AS. That's all we've ever done at AS. Well, we tried to. I mean, I'd love this. I don't look at the stats on that, but we've tried to do it.
Is that true, Chris?
Don't look at the numbers. I think, okay, so I thought about this all day ever since you sent the questions, Rudy. Suicidology obviously is everything that everyone else has said, and I love that people are learning this on Twitter. That's fantastic. It's obviously a little intuitive, right? Ology, study of, and suicide, obviously, so study of suicide. I think it's much more than that, and I think we've seen that by exactly what we're talking about at the beginning of the hour tonight. The community, the relationships and networking that result from suicidology, things like the conference, things like working together collaboratively on projects to better understand suicide, to better implement things. Suicidology is a true, it's a empowering community, and it's something that gives people the ability to do things they wouldn't normally be doing. Bart was talking earlier about, you know, the idea that talking truth, speaking truth, talking about what we know versus what we don't know, being ethical in the way that we treat this very serious public mental health situation. All of that is wrapped up into what suicidology is, what it means. People learning to become suicidologists experience that as well. So that was a long-winded answer. I'm sorry, but I feel like suicidology is much bigger than just the research side, just the study of suicide.
Yes, we have very long wind on this show. Hudson Harris, I did not forget about you.
I hope not. So I'm actually going to say, I agree with what everyone said. For me, suicidology, I found out I was a suicidologist. I think April and I were sitting in Austin, Texas, year and a half ago. I'd been working with suicide hotlines, mobile crisis, and doing that kind of work, and I had no idea that I was a part of it. I didn't know that that's what I was. And this idea that there was a term that we were all fighting suicide together. I still remember where I was sitting. I'm pretty sure I was having fajitas and April was drinking a margarita. But she looked at me and she said, "You're a suicidologist." And I went and put it on my bio and my Twitter bio the next day. And it's something that I'm proud of. To me, it's how we're all working together to fight.
Well, I'm glad.
Damn good, by the way. And you're a suicidologist. And you're a suicidologist.
You get a suicidologist. And you get a suicidologist.
By the way, I do the thumbs up thing, like, out of habit because of you, April. There are just some things about this show that I just will not change, no matter how much shit Hudson gives me for it.
Oh, hey, I forgot something. Can I say something that I forgot? Okay.
Sure.
The other thing that was just fucking awesome and very serendipitous, Rudy, is that you asked this very specific question, define suicidology. Not many people know this, but AAS is going to be building out a campaign strategy around that exact question. What is suicidology? We have, I have all these ideas for some design stuff with definitions, but really what we're going to be doing is over the next, several months, asking our members, asking the public, what does suicidology mean to them, and sort of build this out from a community perspective. So I just thought it was really cool that was the first question and a great way to lead into this larger conversation.
Yeah, I wish we had someone to come on the show that could express the corporate views of AAS on their behalf.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Let's take it to the Twitter chat and let's give some shout outs. Hey, April Foreman, I know her. Elise, who I got to present with the other day on alternative career paths in suicidology, says suicidology includes anyone who is studying suicide and not just academia, research, or clinical work. Megan Hirschfield says a very important study of suicide, which is so important to help learn ways to prevent suicide. M. Thinkling is already one step ahead of us. We'll get to you, don't worry. Okay, so, and thank you to Krista for retweeting everyone. Let's get to, I saw Ashley J's tweet. I figure it's the science and study of suicide. I don't know much about it, and I'm super interested to learn more about it. Well, hopefully we'll do it justice. We certainly have the right crew of people. Amelia says, lives worth living and improving the systems of care that have failed far too many. Tom Crook said, okay, that's question number 2. So let's go on to question number 2 since people are already getting there. Question number 2, what do you feel like your role is as a suicidologist? Hopefully I phrased that well. Let's go to Doc Foreman.
Oh, I think about this a lot because I feel like the thing that I do is try to put my feet in my fingers and feet and toes like Twister in a lot of different spaces. So one of the things that we've been doing here at SPSM,
invited or not.
I know. That is
no, I gotta put that as a text message alert.
I miss you guys so much.
It's consensual for those people who are new. It is totally consensual for those people who are new. This is a consensual activity.
I in terms of my role, it has definitely been as a person who is looking towards the future, who's been connecting people and has been thinking about, like, why have we not made more scientific progress? Why have we not made more progress on reducing deaths, reducing attempts, facilitating recovery? Why don't we know much more than we knew even, a couple decades ago? Like, what's happened? And so sort of coming onto the scene, like, how can I, if you're asking what my role is, and I don't know if there's a good word. I mean, HUDSON called me a badass bitch of mental health at Austin a year ago. Was it or
as
badass
you should.
Woman? I can't remember.
It was the badass woman of mental health, just for the record.
I like that. I like badass bitch, but I.
Okay, I mean, I said that to you directly.
But I think that it has been a lot of, like, what can we do that we're not doing? What's holding us back? How can I connect people or put things together? How can I change public conversations? How can I nudge the system so that what's missing, that it's not working already? I think, when Chris talked about, like, finding people and figuring out where they go so that the most good happens, I've done a lot of that. And so to that end, it's been really, I've existed in some different kinds of positions and in some unusual combinations of spaces. But I think that's, like, if you see me, the chances are that I'm trying to figure out how to move us forward.
If you were to take down that curtain behind you, would we see all the hats that you wear?
Oh my God. Can I tell you, and I'm really, really grateful. I work for VA. I'm not speaking on their behalf, but I have been even just so deeply blessed to be able to be employed in a federal position and still wear these hats. And I do so with a lot of thoughtfulness and, ethics and consultation. But the issue was, like, if the system as it was and people where they was working, there wouldn't be a need for me. So maybe it's like Mary Poppins. I come in, we move things around a little bit, and then when it starts working, then maybe someone said, well, what if you solved the problem of suicide tomorrow? Who would you be and what would you do? And I said I'd have to go where I was needed, but I think this is where I'm needed.
Well, I need you, Dr. Bart Andrews, to answer question number 2.
Bart, the hair looks amazing, by the way. The corona pandemic is doing great wonders for the swoop.
Yeah, apparently I'm not going to get a haircut anytime soon, and I'm thinking about protesting about it because I'm going to tell you, haircuts are important.
So this is your question.
So, Rudy, my role in all this, I think that one of the things that I disagree with a lot is that we don't know what we're doing in suicide prevention. We actually know an awful lot. I think the biggest challenge is that we don't apply the things that we know in a universal way, and I think it's incredibly frustrating. I think the behavioral health field has been grossly unethical in its approach to suicide prevention, and I think they need to be called out for that. As you know, mental health providers are not required. Now, there's some limited requirements in like 10, 11 states now, but as a general rule, mental health professionals are not required to have extensive training in suicide assessment and intervention to be a licensed practitioner. I think that's grossly unethical and inappropriate. I hate saying this, but your chances of running into a therapist that knows what they're doing with suicide assessment intervention is probably about 2%. That's disgusting to me and needs to change. Disgusted that our field, the Association of Suicidology is 50 plus years old and they never worked to set standards or make it an ethical requirement that behavioral health practitioners be adequately trained to provide these vital life-saving services. And I think that it's just absolutely ridiculous. So I think we'd actually make a lot of progress if we just had everybody trained appropriately and had standards of care. Can you believe we've got standards of care for all kinds of healthcare issues? We do not have an agreed upon standard of care for suicide assessment intervention across the 50 states. And that's just ridiculous. So one of my goals is that we really need to embrace standards and get everybody adequately trained so that people who are coming in who are at risk of suicide have a standardized level of care. And we're still using hospitalization as a primary treatment for people at risk of suicide, even though we have no evidence at all that the hospital is effective. And we've got a lot of evidence that it actually may make it more likely that people will kill themselves. So the whole system's just completely jacked up. And I see it as my role is to point out that, hey, y'all suck, and we could do a lot better at this if you get your shit together.
Yeah, I don't think the word disgusting gets said enough in this world.
I use it a lot.
What say you, Tony?
What is this we're doing? Is that what?
What is your role?
What is your role as a suicidologist?
Yeah. I think now at this point in time, after we did this work together, I think challenging the status quo while respecting the past as leadership at AAS. AAS has this 50-year history of suicide prevention, crisis prevention, and we're here to try to push the field forward and make leadership happen and encourage great people to do great work. And that's what I believe AAS is for, and that's what I believe I'm here for. I don't think that AAS has always been good at that every day, and I don't think suicide and suicide prevention clinically has always been good at that. Is always good at that. As Bart said, it's a great tragedy that live rescues are still a thing, and that's the most frequent intervention. Is hospitalization is something that we deserve, that patients, the field, we deserve better. We could do better. So that's what I'm here to do. Try to get people, try to build the infrastructure, try to lead the infrastructure to make it better.
Yeah, because you also do a lot of work in data. So, I mean, don't you see that as suicidology?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, our work in data science, which is my job, is meant to create behavioral health analytics that are groundbreaking. It's groundbreaking work. It's the next generation of behavioral health. Whether Quantify, our little company, gets to do it and we've become very successful and it works is one thing. Is aside, this is going to happen. Our future in medicine is a algorithmic future. There is no question in my mind. And we build behavioral health algorithms based on artificially intelligent systems, human in the loop, artificially intelligent systems that are meant to learn from people, work with people, not instead of people. It's not a replacement. The kind of technology we do is not a replacement for human beings. It's meant to augment care. It's meant to create clinical decision support. It's meant to help and support individuals who are managing SPMI, who are managing even mild anxiety, mild depression. These kind of analytics can help give you a place to stand and help you get better faster. And it's going to happen. It can't happen fast enough in my mind.
Well, you have my Fitbit data, so do with that what you will.
Oh, check out ourdatahelps.org, ourdatahelps.org. If you haven't donated your data, donate your data today at ourdatahelps.org. That's my plug.
Yes, let's tweet that out, ourdatahelps.org. So, but while we're doing that, let's get to Chris Maxwell. What is your role?
I'm going to echo everything that everybody else said. I think the reason that this group gets along so well and is so effective in what we're doing is because we're all similarly like-minded. We all sort of bicker back and forth at some point on certain things, but for the most part, we are doing this because we have recognized that for 50 years, what we've been doing hasn't worked on a large scale. And so we need to figure out how to implement these things better, how to innovate. And I hate to use the really overused word disrupt, but that's sort of what I feel like this group is really good at. You can ask my previous bosses about how disruptive I can be. That's sort of where I'm at. But the other thing is, my other really huge mission is to help to better communicate findings, research, personal stories, things that make real impacts in the media and entertainment. Helping create relationships with the media has been one of the coolest things that I've been able to do and that I've been asked to do. Finding ways to be partners with the media, with the entertainment folks, instead of deriding them for using certain language or not focusing on the right things or whatever the case is, but creating those long-term relationships that result in some sort of didactic exchange. How can I help you? How can you help me? How can we better enhance the way that we talk about suicide so that we can save lives, but also reduce things like prejudice and discrimination around the conversation? So That's been I think one of my biggest roles, and one of the things that, again, that I'm super proud to be able to be involved with.
How about you, Hudson Harris?
Oh, Hudson Harris. Oh my God.
Hey, we gotta let Hudson speak.
So I just want to, so like,
before you do that, people are asking about Hamlet. I feel like you need to say something.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
Hamlet's actually at my feet right now, napping, and he will be on soon, specifically for all of you. So I actually wrote like my answer out for this one because it's become really important part of who I am. I think my role and the thing that I'm really good at is that I'm not a behavioral health provider. I don't have training in behavioral health, but this is my passion. And so my role as a suicidologist is to bring the suicidology lens to where it isn't. What Chris just said, I've taken that to heart, and I took it to heart a couple of years ago when I started trying to apply to conferences and write papers and get sponsorships and investment from organizations that had never put money into suicide prevention. And that approach to be constantly pushing out, whether it's with my clients at conferences, is something that I think is really core part of who I am. And like I literally received a phone call from a conference where I wanted to talk about suicide prevention, and they said, "Why are you submitting this talk to a precision medicine conference?" And I said, "Well, you're clearly just not ready for it." So some of it's also just like pushing the boundaries. I'd also say the educate and advocate piece is really big. Like Amelia, Bart, Travis, a lot of you out there, like the memes are fast and furious. Like the idea that Bart didn't grow up memeing just breaks my brain, but like it's a big part of it. And like pushing it out there, like I can't tell you how many people reached out to me and say how much they helped. I'd say the last one, outside of the really going where it's not and innovating, is showing up. Everybody on this chat tonight and a lot of you out there have showed up for me. April drove from Louisiana to Texas for me. Tony has been there for me countless numbers of times when I took big risks professionally to go out on my own and do it. Bart has been there for me, helping me navigate super complex things with providers. And like I said, Chris has really helped me with how to not just constantly be a rabble-rouser, but also build relationships that matter. And Rudy as well. Like you and I, what we've done with SPSM, like we show up for each other. Like we're suicidologists, and I'm relentless as fuck. We're not going to give up. So that's what being a suicidologist is to me. Relentless
as fuck. I like that. But let's see what the people on Twitter are saying. Yes. Okay. So Dr. blah, 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 Elise says, as a therapist and attempt survivor, I feel my role is to subvert stigma, show that lived experience as an asset, and keep making noise about it until the culture changes and therapists don't face immense discrimination and ableism for having #SPSM to do. Sean Erringer, who's a great man all around, who's actually the person who introduced me to one of my co-hosts, Marie Shanley, says, "Thanks, man. Great to see you all get the band back together. We'll try to." Okay, well, that's an awesome answer, Sean. Krista says, "Be honest, ask questions, listen, care, empower whenever possible. Do what I can, where I can." Hey, Rihanna, how are you doing? Hope your date went well. Okay, so let's just get on to question number 3 because we're falling behind. Question number 3, and that would be, what are some topics that don't get enough attention at suicide prevention conferences and events? Something tells me that there might be fresh answers that are on my guest and co-host's mind at this moment. But let's go to Doc Foreman first.
I'm having a good time reading the Twitter chat. I can't help myself.
I can't keep up with it.
So the question is, repeat it for me because I was like literally reading the Twitter chat and then I was like hurrying back to the screen because I'm naughty.
Oh, basically just topics and that don't get the attention that they deserve at suicide prevention conferences and events. So,
we just did a conference this year, which really focused on social justice and equity and inclusion. And I thought that was great as a theme. So I think that's something that we could have said, but that's in fact what happened this year. In my mind, we should be talking about, in my mind, the things that we're not, that people seem to be unwilling to change. And there are a bunch of them. I don't know like in this chat, we're talking about why isn't there a standard of care and why don't you have to have that training for your license? Because we all know, like when I showed up at my very first conference, it was mind blowing, the things that people had known for a long time. So I don't know why we're not having a conversation about what's stopping us from like storming every licensing board in every state and having this conversation. Because we know this. I don't know why we're not having a big press conference saying every year this many people have died. We've been telling you to do these things. So it would be this many people minus X that die. We want less people to die. What has stopped you from doing these things? We don't talk about, I did not know until last year that there were only 3 full-time employees in the CDC who studied, or who did the suicide data for the country. And we made it our mission to really talk about it. And guess what? This year they're at 7 positions and 2 more to hire. So there's going to be 9. But at the same time, because of the opioid crisis, they have over 100 epidemiologists looking at this public health topic. So we need to be saying that this topic is as deserving, and we need to be really showing everybody where the deficits are in like black and white, like this many epidemiologists, this many people doing data. The coronavirus happened, and we went from not knowing much about it to having a daily count, but we still can't count suicide decades later. Bullshit. We can do those things. There are things that we don't know because we have absolutely not insisted on the infrastructure to do the science and to do the public health infrastructure that this issue deserves. And I'm just going to keep saying that until we get it.
Hear, hear.
What say you, Dr. Bart?
Well, April Fool's is amazing. I would add some things. We don't spend enough time talking about the funding gap. When you look at suicide as the 9th or 10th primary killer of human beings in the country, compared to what we spend on it in terms of state and federal budgets, it's a paltry compared to things that are killing far less people. So we really haven't attacked the lack of funding. It's a real issue. We haven't attacked the lack of not just research funding, but clinical care funding. Look at how much money we're willing to spend on MRIs and blood tests. And we spend, there's almost $0 specifically dedicated to suicide prevention care in clinical settings. We need to be talking about that. We're not talking enough about the barriers to getting everybody trained. What is the holdup? And why aren't you utterly ashamed if you're a licensure board or a accrediting body of a counseling, psychology, or social work program that you're not mandating this? I think those are things that need to be talked about. People need to be called out. Agencies need to be called out. I really think I am really curious and excited about some of the potential of psychedelics. Ketamine is showing some initial success, and more we're finding that psilocybin is very effective in refractory depression. I think that there's a lot of opportunity there. And my final thing is we don't spend enough time talking about the role of peers, and that I really think that people who are treated for suicide, part of the thing we should be listening to them is helping other people, that we really should be harnessing the strength of lived experience. And I think that's an area for a lot of growth. And final, we're not looking at the deleterious effects of poor therapy and hospitalization. I'm not seeing any studies that actually look at how is this damaging when clinicians aren't adequately trained. We've been reluctant to look at deleterious effects in therapy for years because nobody wants to open that can of worms up. And we really need to be looking at the damage that hospitalization causes. When you look at middle-aged white men in rural areas that make up a huge chunk of our suicides, one of the biggest reasons they don't reach out for help is they're afraid of being hospitalized against their will. And that fear is very legitimate, right? And so, boy, we really need to stop using techniques that we don't have evidence that work. We need to be studying these things to find out what are better ways to do this.
Yeah, one of the things I found so shocking is I was at a presentation that was at the virtual conference that was right before a presentation that I was doing. And it says in no uncertain terms that if someone doesn't want to give up their gun right away, that one of the first solutions is to, as a therapist, to recommend them for involuntary treatment. And that just blew my mind about how there are trainings. There's people telling young psychologists that this should be at the forefront of your bag of tricks.
Agreed.
But Bart Andrews is tweeting, so let's go to Tony.
So many things, too many things. But I'll start with computational biostatistics. I think
As you
that
do.
all the other sciences get it. They get plenty of it. We don't get almost any of it. It is not something that's commonly seen at suicide and crisis related conferences, and we should insist upon it. We should be screaming about it. And epidemiology, that's my second favorite. We don't get epidemiologists from the mainstream. We don't get compensation models. The folks that work on peers and social workers, psychologists and psychiatrists and medical doctors should all be compensated for their time for caring for people. If we want people to be cared for, then the professionals have to be compensated for it. And we never hear about that. We never hear about how to advocate for better compensation models from the payers. We don't hear about the current challenges. We don't hear about the policy making. Those are not conversations that go on. They need to happen as soon as possible.
What say you, Chris Maxwell?
The question is about what are we not talking about and what should we be talking about? Okay, yeah. So we definitely need to be talking about disparities. I saw that who was it? I just had him on the screen. So we've been seeing this on Twitter anyway a few times, but I think it's Dr. Nicole. We need to be talking about disparities in things like income and race and access to care. Treatment once you're in, or treatment of an individual once you've accessed that care. We need to be talking about how suicide impacts different cultures in ways that can potentially highlight some ways that we can prevent it. We need to be talking about suicide attempts more than we're talking about deaths, because obviously you can't have deaths without attempts. We need to figure out what is causing the attempts. We need to start looking at those numbers in different ways, and we need to focus, I think, more on creating lives worth living instead of trying to prevent suicide. So there's some that's some solid stuff that we need to be talking about pretty consistently. We also just need to be focusing on the stories of people with lived experience. It's still like we've made movement. Obviously, in 2014, that was the first time that we had, any sort of recognition at a national level for attempt survivors, and that's amazing. That's great. I don't know that we've done a lot since then, and that's a shame. That's a crime. We need to be focusing on the people who have experienced these things. We need to be listening to them. And we absolutely need to be including them in the larger national conversations, not as tokens, but as people who are actually there to affect change. Yeah, and Chris, speaking of tokens, we actually had Dr. Kimya and Dennis on SPSM Chat last year. I love Kimya. She's awesome. Yeah, and that's how she felt like at last year's conference, where she's there to talk about Black suicide and suicide prevention in marginalized communities. And she was basically at the last spot of the last day of the Survivor Conference, the Lost Survivor Conference, and just felt marginalized herself. So would you say that more needs to be done than just including them on the program? And we did that this year with Native American voices right at the forefront, but there still is a lot more work to do, wouldn't you say? Oh yeah, no, we're not anywhere near done, and we won't be. Like there's no done to this issue. Making sure that everybody is included and feels included and feels like they're a part of what we're doing. It's totally unreasonable for us to help some members feel included in part of what we're doing, and not others. And so we need to be listening to those conversations. I've talked to Kimya a couple of times, and we've been trying to work with her on ways that we can potentially boost inclusion. And so this conference this year was a huge step in the right direction. But no, we're not done at all. What say you, mental strategy?
There we go, I muted. So I have three things. One, I want to share the very first statistic that surprised even me. It came from Chris Maxwell I think the article is now a year and a half old, but that we only spent $68 million on suicide prevention research at NIH in 2018. And if you look at the amount of money that goes into things like essential oils or other things, like it's paltry. And then compared to the other top 10 leading causes of death, it's tiny. The other one I would say is, only 27 states require school personnel to be trained in suicide prevention. And suicide is the leading cause of death of second leading cause of death in K through 12 behind vehicle accidents. This is Hamlet. He came by to say hi. He'll be by later as well. And then the last one, just echoing on what Bart said, 4% of grad programs even offer a suicide prevention specific course. And so, we can do a lot on the back end, but if we're not doing things at the top of education for kids and in the community, we're always going to be fighting a losing battle, which makes Hamlet very sad. Very sad.
All right, so let's just throw us up all on screen. I'm just going to read off the tweets because it's just taking too long to just scroll through all of them. So Dr. Nicole says, in response to question...
Rudy, hi.
I'm sorry, the pig is... Come on, it's hard. Okay, Nicole, go for Nicole.
Not enough attention on the chronic effects of disparities related to race/ethnicity, gender, social detriments of health, and all these other things we are uncomfortable talking about on platforms like that. Krista says people's basic needs aren't getting met. Social justice issues. How broad of a topic suicidology really is. This is about the things that need to get more attention at conferences and suicide prevention events. You guys are all over the place. So awesome. Let's get on to question number 4. Question number 4. What are some aspects or approaches of suicidology that need to change immediately? Let's go back to Doc Foreman.
Immediately, we need to start collecting data about suicide like people are fucking dying every damn day, and a lot of it nationally, so we can figure out what the fuck is going on. We can allocate resources differently, and we can start to have a data-informed picture of what is happening. There is literally nothing but public will and a small amount of money that's stopping us from doing this. Shame on us for deciding we didn't need an epidemiological system that counted the 10th leading cause of death in our country on time. Shame on us.
Dr. Bart.
I feel strongly about that.
No worries, no worries.
You do feel strongly about it. I think things that really need to happen is we need to be embracing zero suicide in healthcare settings. Preventing suicide should be part of every healthcare professional's goals, every healthcare agency's goals. We're so focused on all these other health things and taking a public health approach. You've heard folks talking about public health a little bit tonight. Those are things that really change data will help with that. But just taking an overall public health approach to preventing suicide, I think, would be a huge step forward.
What say you, Tony Wood?
Drive policy with the survivors. We have 1.2 million adults annually at minimum in the United States, and we talk about deaths all the time. Stop it.
What say you, Chris Maxwell?
The old Bob Newhart trick. Stop it.
Stop it.
Stop it. I love it. No, I think we need the field and we need the science to be taken seriously. So we immediately need intersections with legitimate technology companies. And I'm not talking individual organizations. I'm saying the field in general. Suicide needs to be taken seriously and implemented into platforms like cell phone platforms from Apple or Google, whether it's Android or iOS. It needs to be in all of our personal assistants on any of these devices, whether it's on your Microsoft PC or your Windows machine, or whether it's on your iPad or your Kindle. I don't give a shit. It needs to be. Suicide needs to be a part of these technological pieces and these devices that we use every single minute of every single day. The fact that we have, I know, me too. The fact that we have something like a health kit on some of these platforms, so we don't have a mental health kit or a suicide health kit, something like that. We need that immediately. It would dramatically changed the landscape of how we deal with prevention, how we deal with intervention. It would change the entire game and save lives.
Hudson Harris.
I'm going to yes and what Chris said because I'm pretty certain he was one of the people that pushed me to do that. And it's one of those things where we need innovation. And the way that we're going to get innovation is through technology companies, through public-private partnerships, and thinking outside the box. I worked with SAP. They're the second largest software company in the world, and they did a lot of accounting, and now they're doing government work and healthcare work, but had never done anything in mental health. And over the course of 9 months, we proved that we could take mental health data for an entire region, one of the largest top 10 populations in the country. We anonymized all of the crisis data, all of the Medicaid data to understand encounters, diagnosis, medications, and we created regional dashboards that had heat maps of where crises were and distance to provider relative to treatment success and outpatient connection rates. And we did it like in a matter of months. And so we have to build those. We have to build those. We have to get out there, and we have to get really, really politely in people's faces that this is something that we have to do. It's literally killing ourselves.
You be polite. You're a nice person, Hudson. I'll be jerk. You be polite.
Okay. Then you can be bad cop. I'll be good cop.
So before we get into final thoughts, I just want to make sure to give some more attention. There's a lot of great tweets. I love you all. Great conversation. We're going to try to retweet as much as we can. Just make sure to use that hashtag SPSM. I did want to highlight Joelle Marie, who had a response to this very same question and is also one of our co-hosts. So in response to question number 4, access of, and she puts access in all caps, access of all kinds needs to be prioritized, budgeted for. It is not an option to have quote unquote not have enough money if we prioritize life/quality of life. Alienation, lack of skills and support, lack of resources, lack of acknowledgement of personhood, communication restriction, and then she goes on to say exclusion, they all contribute to physical and mental health problems and affect opportunities to socialize, which isn't that a contributor to outcomes of suicide completion. Generally, we need to stop excluding people instead of falling out and including people. And speaking of access, don't you think it's weird, everyone, that there's major conferences who say we're doing a virtual conference and we have confirmed attendees that are hard of hearing, and so our solution is to just tell the presenters to speak clearly into their webcams, but use a service that has closed captioning options. Am I the only one who thinks that's weird?
It's not ideal, that's for sure. We were lucky enough during the members meeting to have someone who was providing ASL, and that was really, really cool. Definitely need to look into providing those options in a different way. We actually, for the in real life conference, we had worked with Joelle and a few other people to set up a service that was actually going to provide digital. Both digital closed captioning, and then we were also going to have a screen up with someone providing ASL too. So it's always on our mind, Rudy. And like I said, what we were able to do this year is not ideal. I can throw out any number of excuses, but they're not worth anything. So I agree.
I speak to that just briefly, and to not throw out excuses, but what I think the learning gap is? Would that be okay?
Sure. Sure. Yes, of course.
So,
yeah.
You know, I'm a person who speaks and presents a lot, and who does it digitally, like as much as I've done it in person. And I had the experience of doing some live webinars that were broadcast and recorded, and of course were shown to about 360 or so thousand employees. We had to do a training VA, and we had just a couple of months to do this. And one of the things that we considered and that we did was we did closed captioning of the presentation. For me to learn to speak really slowly, clearly, and there wasn't a camera, and I'm used to just speaking really fast, and we had a closed captioning service. It was a real skill gap as a presenter. I had really been unaware up to that point about the need to do any of that, or how hard it was to do. To do live closed captioning is actually really challenging, and for someone to speak and present with that in mind is actually one of those live streaming skill sets that probably as professionals, we all need to be more aware of and to develop. Technology can make things accessible, and we have to learn them. I will say, because of SPSM, we had a lot more people in the field of suicidology than we might have otherwise, in my opinion, who were ready to use technology and do live stream. But even for me, who has a lot of experience, I was really ignorant until a couple of years ago about how hard it is to speak digitally, and I'm even slowing down now, in a way that closed captioning services will work well. And that's on us to all get better about that.
Thank you.
From Rudy.
Thank you for tackling it. I really do appreciate that. Since we're already on you, Doc, let's get into final thoughts, which is another convention from SPSM original that I've carried on.
I gotta break in before we move on because it's so important.
Sure.
Has a disability community and committee dedicated to finding new ways to serve new audiences, not just the deaf and hard of hearing, but I believe Joelle Marie is the chair of that. So please, if you're interested in AS and you're interested in being involved in accommodations for disabilities and finding a way to be more inclusive, especially in suicide and crisis prevention, tweet at Joelle. I'm sure that she'd be keen to engage with you. It's cheaper than ever to join AAS.
Yes, she is definitely awesome, but can't do it alone. So hopefully more people can join alongside her and do great things and create more accessibility, and not just AAS, but all conferences, all events. So let's go back to
Absolutely.
April, and let's go back to final thoughts.
Oh my gosh, final thoughts. My final thought is that, Friday, I got up and I was crying, and it's not like me. I think I was telling my friends, I hadn't just cried for no reason since I'd been pregnant a long time ago. And I know that some of it is this pandemic, and there was a real piece of it about not being able to see people in person this week and connect with all of you in person. The one time a week one time of year I really get to see people. These digital relationships build real collaborations, real professional relationships, and I know they've resulted in real change we can measure and talk about in our industry. And my whole body knew before my brain knew how important you all are to me and how much we've already done together, because the not seeing you really impacted me so strongly. I'm so grateful to be with you all.
Yes, and I'm grateful for you in general, April. Like all you've done for me and have guided me since the beginning. I remember first meeting you at NamiCon back in Denver a few years ago. You probably didn't really know me, and I followed you around. You took me to, we had dinner with Jess and a couple other people, and we
strangers on camera.
Yes. I gotta find that picture someday and tweet it out. But yeah, so thank you for handing me the keys to the kingdom for SPSM Chat, and I hope I haven't let you down.
You have done an amazing job, and I'll let everyone else final thought it.
Thank you. Final thought it, Bart Andrews.
I really echo what April said. I look forward to the conference every year. It's really a time where I get rejuvenated being around all of you, talking and meeting. It's incredible. And I really missed that this year, and work's been really busy with the COVID-19 response. So it was a really hard week. So I was looking forward to doing this and being able to connect with folks again and talk about all the things we typically talk about at a conference. So thank you, Rudy. Thank you to all the current SPSM crew for having us on tonight. It was gracious and really helped us. It helped me personally with the grieving process, because I really missed the conference.
Yeah, and thank you, Dr. Bart. You are never boring. Let's just say that. So I always appreciate you bringing the heat every single time. So thank you for that.
Boring crowd in suicide, anything.
Yes, and we've had some boring crowds. So speaking of not boring, Chris Maxwell.
Not being there. I mean, we all had a weep fest Friday. Was it Friday morning? Thursday morning?
Yeah, it was Friday morning.
And so, yeah, no, it's not been ideal. I had some personal things that were going to happen. I had some stuff planned that didn't happen, which was really rough. Being able to connect with everybody during the conference virtually was amazing. Being in touch with these three all the time and having their sort of voices kind of like here at all times definitely helps. But yeah, so I don't know. I do want to plug real quickly that if you didn't make it to the conference, if you wanted to check some stuff out and you just didn't get to, you still can see everything. We recorded the entire sessions or the entire breakout sessions. We are going to make those available through an AAS 20 Academy. We'll have more information about that coming out in the next couple of weeks, but basically you'll have access to everything, including more content that's going to happen over the summer and fall that we couldn't include in this already massive conference. So you're amazing, Jonathan. Love you, dude. You rocked the conference. So yeah, just check out aasconference.org for more information and hit me up if you have any questions.
Will we have access to the private chat on AAS Academy?
I don't think I want to talk about that.
Okay, so let's go to final thoughts, Hudson Harris.
I would echo what everybody said. I have to say, out of all the conferences I was supposed to do this year, AAF was the one that I was looking forward to the most. Hamlet was too. Knowing that you all are there is such a boon to my soul. And then with, I've been working on the COVID response and wasn't able to attend the digital, and it was even harder, doubly so. So to me, it's, reach out there, connect to each other. I did an interview. I have to go for kids.
Going to
leave the pig.
Take care of your kids during a live stream while holding your pigs is now the teleworking reality of most people who are working digitally. I feel like we've just had the most Corona moments in telestreaming that we could have.
Is anyone else disappointed? Is anyone else disappointed that Hudson's wearing pants? Is it just
if
me?
I say yes, how much trouble am I going to be in?
No, don't worry about that. While we're waiting for Hudson, hopefully he comes back. I just want to give my little final thoughts, and it's a great thing. I'd like to see the silver linings in all these crises and tragedies, that live streaming has become more of a legitimate platform to not only communicate with friends and family and coworkers, but just in general. We see that on Twitch and Mixer, their numbers going up. And so when I first started live streaming, I felt like no one took it seriously, that it was just a cute thing, it was a fad, and it's never going to last, no one cares. So the fact that we're all here, we're doing this thing, live streaming is bigger than ever, the numbers keep going up more and more and more. I feel redeemed.
The pig and the kid have stolen the show, Rudy. I'm sorry, the pig and the kid have stolen the show. So I'm going to reset. Go ahead now, tell us again, Rudy. Sorry.
Well, that's the thing, is that I could not have done this show alone. If it was just me talking for an hour, people would have stopped caring. So we have to use pets, pigs, dogs, cats, and kids to keep it lively. That is the secret sauce.
We have been for years because we're no fools. We're willing to be effective, not sanctimonious.
Yes. So thank you all. Hopefully we can still get Hudson on. Let me just put the screen on me. I appreciate all of you. I appreciate all the people on the Twitter chat as well, and the Facebook comments. Travis is very, sorry, Heather is a good person. Travis very sad that Hudson had to go. So next week, our guest, Marie Shanley, aka Anxiety, someone that I think everyone watching knows who it is. She is one of our co-hosts, and we have a big announcement coming up, so go check that out next Sunday, 6 p.m. Pacific time, 9 p.m. Eastern time. It's going to be great to finally get into the down and dirty of her story and all the cool things that she's doing and will be doing going forward. So be on the lookout for that. Go support all of these people, especially our datahelps.org. Make sure that you're following along on Twitter at SPSM Chat, of course. Facebook.com/SPSM Chat, YouTube.com/SPSM Chat, Mixer.com/SPSM Chat, and the blog is updated finally, SPSMchat.com, where you can not only watch this week's episode, but all past episodes, even going back to the Doc Foreman days. So that's going to be quite the time warp. Let's check one more time to see if we have Hudson back.
Yes,
is he here?
I am back.
Oh, okay, awesome. Let's get our piggy update. I was so worried.
Oh, where'd he go? Damn it. All right. Hong Kong. Hamlet says hello. Hate that. It's so ugly.
That's awesome.
Oh, it's just,
Oh, boy.
you're defiling Hamlet. Okay. There we go. That was good. I liked it. Hamlet, actually, I will tweet out pictures of this, received a very generous gift from fellow FPSM co-host Danielle. He has a new cardigan sweater with orange skulls and gray sweater. So I will tweet that out. Hamlet is doing well and is a source of support for everyone in the neighborhood who comes by and sees him. So keep your piggies close, everybody. Love you guys.
Well, that's my closing line, but okay.
I know. I took it. Because you keep doing the GIF with the weird pig thing. I sent you like 80 GIFs that aren't weird.
Oh, I didn't receive those, but that's fine. Okay, so I'm going to let you all go. You're all amazing. I love you, Hudson. Hopefully I get to see you soon. Hopefully one day I'll get to go running with Chris. And I hope that I get to see all of you again someday. So
if you go running with Chris and don't make it out of the woods, we'll know what happens.
Well, that's not the worst thing that could happen.
It's creepy.
He's survival, man. You get out in the woods, all bets are off.
Boom. And not live.
Yes. And so since we have the original crew and Hudson's already stole my line, I will let April close us out.
Thank you so much. It's been another phenomenal SPSM. We hope that you'll check out the AAS Academy and catch up on some of the conference presentations that you missed. And we hope you'll show up next week. Thank you so much. Have a great week.